remember my summertime '06. I was fresh out of high school, and I wasn't doing a goddamn thing with my life. What's going on, everybody? It's the Granddad Woolly, and you are here again for another edition of Woolly Reviews Hip Hop Data. Today we got an album review today. We're going to be talking about the major label debut from a West Coast artist who's been getting a lot of heat, picking up a lot of momentum. He's done a few things, dropped a few mixtapes, built a little bit of a buzz for himself, and now it's time for him to be on the big stage with his new major label debut. So you know he had to holler at it, talking about Vince Staples' Summertime '06. Now, for those who don't know, Vince Staples is a Long Beach, California MC. He came up a few years ago due to the success of Earl Sweatshirt. Well, he's affiliated with Odd Future, or now the defunct Odd Future, but he's most notable for his work with Earl Sweatshirt, most notably on Earl's song Hive, where he got sort of his biggest exposure for the most part. And then from that point on, he did more work with other artists, and then he started dropping his own projects. He recently dropped his EP, Hell Can Wait, which got a lot of positive reviews, which is pretty dope. And it built up a lot more anticipation and buzz for his debut album that's dropping on Def Jam Records. So now it's here. So now let's talk about the shit and see if Vince Staples has dropped a great, classic, super dope debut, or if it's just something that we shouldn't talk about ever again. Let's find out. Let's talk about the shit. Now, the first thing I realized about this album is that it is a double album. These days, you don't usually get double disc albums, and this is a double disc album. Well, if you buy the disc or if you buy it digitally, it's split up into two different parts. It's 20 songs, 10 songs each, and the album is pretty much about an hour long, so each side is about 30 minutes. It's not really long for a double disc album, and as far as the length of the songs, some of them clock in really short, around 2 minutes to about low 3 minutes, so the songs aren't very long. There are a few that clock in around 4 minutes, but for the most part, these songs are kind of short and sweet and sort of a real stop and go type thing. It's really not that much of a lengthy process. Kind of the songs are here and there and gone. So that is something about this album that really kind of put me off to the fact of it being a double disc album, seeing as it's still an hour long. It could have just been one huge album broken up into different parts instead of seen as a double disc. But if that's how Vince wanted to do it, let him do it. It's his shit. Who am I to fucking judge? Now, as far as the production on here, it's very, very dope on here, and it's actually all or mostly done by the very talented, legendary No ID, who's most affiliated with Kanye West, as well as others, and he actually is a big figurehead over at Def Jam, so it only makes sense that he would have his hand in this album. There's also production by Clams Casino, Christian Rich, to name a couple for, and also DJ Dahi did some production on here. So he's got some really talented, dope producers, and as far as the production on this album, it fits Vince Staples. If you listen to a Vince Staples project, it's a real low-key, sort of around that Earl Sweatshirt type vibe, was real dark and sort of gloomy, but it's not really like a depressing vibe. It's just kind of real laid-back, low-key, chill type music, and that's kind of how Vince Staples is, even with his rap styles. But this album here has a lot of really great instrumentation. The production on here is really good, even though it is really low-key and dark. There's a lot of nice piano vibes and a lot of bassy, real thick bass and heavy bass on here that really sounds really good. Really good in the car. You guys got some bangers on here, and it's got some real gloomy, laid-back head nodders and just some real chill vibe music that really, really complements Vince's style and what he's about. And I think No ID did a really good job on the production here. He handled about 85% of it, the majority of the album, and then the other producers came in and chimed in with their parts as well. And it all really fits. They all pretty much sound very cohesive. They really all kind of read each other's mind, I guess, or pretty much fit the same tone that was going to really complement Vince's style, which it did. And I really think that this is some of the best production as far as that laid back, gloomy, really heavy, bassy, thick type of production, and it's just something that I really think sets the tone for this album and really just has it a really nice, easy to listen to vibe to it. It's really easy to listen to these beats. It's not too harsh, but they still capture you and keep you interested. Now let's talk about Vince Staples himself and see what he brings on the lyrical tip to this album and see if he's dropping that fire. Now the thing about Vince Staples is he's really, really low key and he's really laid back, and he's not really a rappity rapper, and he's not really one of those people who are real introspective. Vince Staples is pretty much that guy who pretty much tells it like it is. Only thing he knows is what he knows and what he's really lived and talked about. So most of this stuff on the album that he's talking about is his life and his experience living in Long Beach. I guess, I don't know if it was between this time of Summertime in '06 or if this is just, a clever title. But you really hear on most of the majority of the songs what he's went through, how he sees life. He's got a lot of social commentary in here. He talks a lot about the world and how he sees it. Pretty much what goes on in his hood and the people he's interacted and the people he's grown up around and what he's learned from and how he's pretty much become the person that he is based off these experiences and these things he's seen. He's a young guy from Long Beach, California. He's a Crip. He's lived in, pretty, rough areas, and he's done a lot of stuff, that probably would be frowned upon by most. But at the same time, he really has a real smart and really clever and a really, I guess, not really pessimistic or optimistic, but a really realistic approach to how life is, where he's from, and just in general. And he really just lives his life by that. And I gotta respect that because he really gives you no filter. And he really just pretty much keeps it 100 and real through this whole album. Now the thing about that is that's what you get. He's not very versatile. He won't give you any different styles or different subjects or topics outside of that because that's all he knows and all he can pretty much rap about as far as I'm concerned of what I've heard. And that's not really a drawback or anything like that, but sometimes most people would think you kind of tune out Vince because he's got this real low-key chill voice. And, the fact that he really doesn't go far out of his comfort zone, some people, can gravitate and listen to it, and some people kind of fall out and can't listen to it. Me, I'm in the middle. It just depends on how he's rapping and what he's rapping about. But on this album here, he has a lot of really valid points and a lot of food for thought and a lot of things that really make you think. On top of that, he just really seems to be more confident, more comfortable on the mic, and he seems to really sort of found himself or is finding himself more than on his previous projects where he sounded kind of lazy and just really, he didn't give a fuck. Now he sort of like, sounds like he kind of does give a little bit of a fuck. Vince kind of cares a little bit on here, but not to the point where it's like he sounds like he's really trying too hard. It sounds effortless when he raps, which is really dope, but at the same time, you kind of can't tune him out depending on how the song flows and the vibe of it. But he's pretty dope on this album for the most part, and it's really fucking cool to hear his life and what he's been through and just to see things from his perspective because this dude is a really fucking smart dude for the most part, and he's got a lot of stuff that he has to say, and people need to listen because he's really making some valid fucking points. So good on you, Vince. I like what you did on this album. Now we gotta go with the favorite top 5 tracks. Alright, so we got the top 5 tracks and I'm ready. I'm getting better, y'all. Usually I'm not fucking ready for this time. Last time I was ready, now I'm ready too. And I actually got a few notes that I want to, name out so I'm not fucking up too much. So my top 5 tracks are Lift Me Up, North North, Senorita, Get Paid, C&B, and I got another one. Make it top 6. I don't give a fuck. Like it is. So my top 6 tracks are those, but Lift Me Up is the opening track after when the first disc starts. This is the opening track. And this here, he pretty much just talks about, it's a lot of social commentary. He's pretty much talking about, like in the beginning he says, I'm just a nigga, but now when you get a little bit of money, now I'm Mr. Nigga. Pretty much it's like, no matter, even if you get money, you're still a young black dude and they don't keep their eyes on you, so you gotta always watch what's going on. Nothing really changes even if you do got money in your pocket. Now you just a nigga with money, pretty much to the society is how he thinks, which is really something that you can think about. The next track on this album that I like is North North, which is actually the next track on the disc, the first disc, and this is pretty much about where he's from, North Long Beach, and he's pretty much just talking about how things are there. It's a real dope track. It's got a real nice, bouncy West Coast vibe to it, and I really like it. It's kind of that's where the energy sort of picks up a little bit because the first track, Lift Me Up, is really like kind of low key. Got a real nice bassy sound to it, but this one here kind of picks up with the bass and kind of has that little bit of a, really little bit of a West Coast bop to it. So I really like that track. The next track after that is the single, Senorita, and I like the eerie piano on here. It's really dope, and then it's got that real, hi-hat type, Atlanta Southern type vibe to it, but it still has that little West Coast vibe to it too, so it's kind of like a blend. And then speaking of Atlanta, Future is actually on the hook here, but what's weird is he's not really credited on here, but he is on the hook. I know Future when I hear that nigga, so that's that nigga Future on the hook, and he's pretty much just talking pretty much the same thing about what's going on, in his area and things like that. Pretty much the same subject matter. It's just done over a different type of sound, and it's the dope track, and it's probably one of the more higher energy and higher, higher instrumentalized tracks, if that's even a fucking word, but it's got a lot of instrumentation on there and it's really dope. Next track is Get Paid. Now this is probably one of the higher energy songs, one of the more ignorant type songs, but I like these songs sometimes, and Get Paid is pretty much what it is. It's about getting paid one way or the other, whether you gotta rob a nigga, whether you gotta, make money hustling, whatever it is, you gotta get paid in the streets, and that's pretty much what Vince Staples is saying in this song. It's got a real nice, dark, gloomy vibe, but it's got a lot of energy to it too, so it kind of has a contrast that's really dope, and I like that one. And No ID did that track. He did the last 3 tracks too, and Clams Casino did North North, just gotta say that. Then you got C&B or Coldest Nigga Breathing, and that's pretty much another track where he's sort of like in Lift Me Up, where he's pretty much just, talking about a lot of social commentary stuff. He's got a line where he says, don't shake my hand unless you pass in payment, keep your salutations, I need my 40 acres, pretty much like don't, don't try to patronize me, You know, I'm pretty much about getting my money. I want what's owed to me. And that's how I see it. So, you know, don't try to treat me like I'm somebody less or anything like that, which is dope. And then the last track is pretty much the closing track for the album, for pretty much the closing track, and it's called Like It Is. And this is a real laid back track, but this is pretty much where he's probably his most open in this track. And he's pretty much, I guess you would say, his most optimistic, but yet at the same time pessimistic. So I guess if you go in the middle of that, he's the most realistic in this track. He's pretty much just talking about everything he's seen and, you know, everything he's learned, but also, you know, where he feels like he's gonna go. And he's pretty much just telling it like it is. He's telling everything like it is. He's been doing that the whole album, but now this specific track, he's really telling everything like it is. And I think it's a dope way to close it out. Now the thing about it is it really doesn't. After that, there's a track called 06, which is probably like a minute something long. And it starts off saying next time on Poppy Street. So I'm not sure if the next album's gonna be called Poppy Street, but it's got a real dope, high energy instrumental. And he starts rapping, and then in the middle of his verse, it just cuts off in static, and that's how the album ends. Which I think is a dope way to end the album, and it kind of, you know, pokes my curiosity, like, okay, so what's this next album? Is it going to be called Poppy Street? Is that going to be the beginning track of it? Or is it just something that he's trying to do to just troll us? I don't know, but I'm really intrigued, so now I got to know what that's all about. But those are my top 6 tracks, and overall, I really like this album. But there's something about it that I feel like it's just missing for me. Like, I can listen to this album throughout the whole way. There's not really many tracks other than those 6 that really stand out to me. Other ones are just pretty decent and okay, and the production here is good, but with Vince Staples, I feel like with the lack of versatility, even though he's saying a lot of things that really make you think, and I really appreciate that, it's just missing something. I don't know if it's just him not being able to fully carry an album without switching it up and just keeping that same linear path on the whole 20-track album, and it's just a little bit too much for the most part. Even though it's an hour, just that same thing over and over again in different facets and forms sort of kind of drags down, and you kind of get lost in it. He's got a lot of different features on here too. Janae Aiko, you know, it's got Daily, Joey Fats, Kilo Kish, Snow, Allegra, you know, Hanif Talib, a whole bunch of motherfuckers who I've never fucking heard of, but they all either perform some sort of ad-libs or some sort of backup, or some people actually do rap or sing, but for the most part, they do actually complement the tracks well. But for the most part, I think Vince really wanted to showcase himself and show that he can stand on his own, and even though none of the affiliates are here, I think I hear Earl Sweatshirt on Ramona Park Part 2. I think I hear that nigga in the beginning when he says, I'm a motherfucking legend. I think that's Earl Sweatshirt. You ain't gonna credit it, but I think that's that nigga in there. But for the most part, Vince is pretty much just, you know, trying to go on his own, and I think it's pretty dope, but I just think this album lacks something. I can't put my finger on it, but it just doesn't have that oomph to take it over the top for me. It's just a really solid debut album. And I just think it's something that's missing. I don't know. I think just Vince just needs to keep progressing as an artist, or he needs to sort of show a little bit more versatility in his music, or whatever it is. But I think this is a solid album. I enjoyed it. There's nothing that I really hated, but I didn't love this album. There were a few tracks on here that I like, and I do like how Vince's approach is, but I do, and the production is really good too. It's just something that's just missing. It's just an it factor for me that's missing that doesn't take this album over the top. It just makes it a really, really dope album, but not an amazingly great album, and that's the thing about it. So my final verdict, I'm not saying that Vince Staples' Summertime '06 is an overall pretty dope debut album. It just misses something that I can't put my fucking finger on, and it bothers me. All I'm saying is that the production is nice. You know, Vince really tells it like it is. He keeps it realistic. And even though he's not too versatile and he doesn't really, you know, give you different types of subject matters pretty much, he does rap well. He does tell a good story. He does paint a perfect picture. But he just doesn't have that oomph. And I think it's probably the lack of energy or the lack of just motivation or whatever it is. There's something there that's missing from Vince that I think he's going to get as time goes on. But for the most part, all I got to say is that for me, Vince Staples' Summertime '06 just does not make it to a Granddad approved because I just can't fucking figure out what it is. But I will give it a very highly Granddad recommended. So definitely check it out. It dropped today. Go listen to it. Go support it. Vince Staples is dope. He's, you know, really putting Long Beach back on the map, and I really, you know, like what he's doing. I just hope he takes it and expands what he's doing to make himself a more well-rounded and versatile MC. And his next album, I hope, does that and gives him, you know, the status that I think he deserves, because I think he's a dope MC. I just think he has more work to do. But I got nothing more to say. Vince Staples, Summertime '06 is very highly Granddad recommended. I don't know what the fuck it is, but it's just not there. Flip it. Alright guys, I'm going to do it for today's video. Make sure you give me a thumbs up and drop a comment. Tell me what you think of Vince Staples' Summertime '06 if you've heard it. If you haven't heard it, like I said, it's a really dope album. It's got really good production. The features do good jobs on here. And for the most part, Vince tells it like it is and he gives you what he usually gives you. It's just something missing and I can't fucking put my finger on it. But it is a good listen and you can listen to it the whole way through and there are some pretty good tracks on there for the most part. So go listen to it. Previous videos on the side as well as my music video. Check those out. Show them some love. And as always, Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, Instagram. Links in the description below. And subscribe. Button on the screen. Button below. Woolly Reviews. Twice a week. Gaming channel. Check that out. And I got nothing more to say. So until next time I take my leave. Granddaughter. Vince Staples Summertime '06. His '06 was a lot more live than mine. I'll tell you that. I'm out of here.